2025. We have Councillor Allison, Councillor Anderson. I'll just check if we have Councillor Barker. We don't seem to have Councillor Barker. We have Councillor Bradley, Councillor Brogan, Councillor Brown, Councillor Archie Buchanan, Councillor Matthew Buchanan. I have apologies from Councillor Kalikis. We have Councillor Carmichael, Councillor Chalmers, Councillor Clark, Councillor Convery, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Corbett, Councillor Cowan, Councillor Cowie. I'll just check if we've got Councillor Devlin. We don't seem to have Councillor Devlin. We have Councillor Dewar, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Equi, Councillor Fagan, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Ferguson Miller. I'll check if we have Councillor Frame. We don't seem to have Councillor Frame. We have apologies from Councillor Fulton. We have Councillor Gowland, Councillor Gray. I have apologies from Councillor Hamilton. We have Councillor Handybode, Councillor Horn. I'll check if we have Councillor Horsham. No, we don't seem to have Councillor Horsham. We have Councillor Hose, Councillor Johnson-Dempsey, Councillor Keat, Councillor Kerr, Councillor Lambie, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Lockhart, Councillor Logan, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Hugh MacDonald, Councillor Marsh, Councillor McCallan, Councillor McClymont, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Leslie MacDonald, Councillor McDougall, Councillor McGeever, Councillor McLachlan. I'll check if we have Councillor Nelson. Thank you. We have Councillor Nugent, Councillor Ray, Councillor Razak. I have apologies from Councillor Robb. We have Councillor Ross, Councillor Scott, Councillor Shearer, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Toner, Councillor Walker, Councillor Watson and Councillor Williams. And with that, I'll hand you back to the Provost for today's business.
Okay, we're on to item 1 on the agenda, and I have to advise you that I have accepted a request for an item of urgent business from Councillor Keat, and it will be dealt with under item 7, and it's regarding Hamilton Academical Football Club. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest noted. We'll move on now to item 2 on the agenda, minutes of previous meetings, pages 3 to 12. And it's the minute of the meeting of South Lanarkshire Council held on the 19th of February, submitted for approval as a correct record. Do you agree the minute of the meeting? Yes. Thank you. Item 3. Minutes of special meeting. Minutes of the special meeting of South Lanarkshire Council held on the 26th of February 25, submitted for approval as a correct record. Do you agree the minute of the record? Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, minute of Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee, pages 33 to 36. Minutes of the meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee held on the 19th of November 24, submitted for information. Do we accept that as a correct note of the minutes? Okay. Item 5 on the agenda, South Lanarkshire Integration Joint Board, reappointment of the Council's voting members and substitute members, pages 37 to 40 on your notes, and I invite Ian to speak to this.
Thank you, Provost. Morning. So the purpose of the report is to request approval for the reappointment of the Council's voting and substitute voting members on the IJB. The standing orders of the IJB allow for the Council to appoint those members for a period of 3 years, after which they require to be reappointed. So looking for Council to approve the recommendation set out in the report today. So reappointment of Councillors Walker, Logan, Chalmers and Frame as voting members, and Councillors Faulkner, Williams, MacDonald and Ross as substitute voting members. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any members to wish to ask any questions? Any comments? No? Do you agree the recommendations? Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, councillor meeting participation, pages 41 to 48. Again, I'll invite Ian to speak to this.
Thank you, Provost. So the purpose of the report is to fill an action from the full council meeting on 20th November to bring forward a report on councillor participation at meetings. Members will recall that when the updates were agreed to the standing orders and procedure at the November meeting, a point raised by Councillor Watson, it was agreed that we'd bring back a report on councillor participation at meetings and specifically whether councillors should be able to participate remotely or have to be physically present. It was noted that would be considered by the standard procedures and advisory forum first. You may recall that in the update to the standing orders and procedure, it was the current position was formalised, namely that meetings will be held on a hybrid basis unless otherwise determined by the chair in consultation with senior officers. We've only considered formal council committee meetings being held on a remote hybrid basis, not looked at meetings outside of the formal decision-making structure or informal meetings, and neither considered the IJB or the licensing boards. To help inform the report, officers kept an informal record of participation over sort of November, December time, briefly updated some information from that at section 3 of the report. We've considered the approach in other local authorities. I conducted an informal survey over December and January, summarised the outcomes at section 4.1 and 4.2. What I would say is that all councils have provision for remote participation, and most have an agreed approach around that. Commonly, the chair will participate in person. The levels of remote and in-person participation are extremely variable, depending on the authority, depending on the meeting in question. There are some authorities where some meetings are held in person. Most commonly appears to be some form of appeal or regulatory committees, but that practice doesn't appear to be widespread. So I think what we can say is that local arrangements have developed, particular to the local authority in question on the back of the pandemic, reflecting changing working practices. Elsewhere in the UK, members may be aware, the UK government has committed to bringing forward legislation to around councils in England to hold meetings remotely. That's already available to councils in Wales. In section 4.5 to 4.10 outlined the benefits of remote participation, and broadly speaking, from an officer perspective, believe that the current approach works well and should continue as it offers potential significant benefits to increase accessibility and inclusion. This ought to be consistent with other Scottish local authorities and direction of travel south of the border. What I would say also is summarised in the report that if we didn't allow that flexibility, then there would be that risk, I think, to the council, particularly in terms of the Equality Act and those with protected characteristics. The Standard Procedure and Advisory Forum considered this and supported this position, maintaining the status quo, but agreed it was a matter for business managers to take up within their own political groups in terms of encouraging in-person attendance for some meetings. The SPAF also considered the current approach to holding area committees and agreed it would be preferable these are held within the relevant locality to enable more local residents to be able to attend in person, and agreed that a proposal on this would be brought forward to this meeting. We've set that out in section 4 there, and recommending a hybrid meeting solution is adopted, involving meetings in each of the 4 localities. Obviously, Hamilton would be held here in Committee Room 1. Rather than a fixed solution where equipment is installed independently, recommending a mobile solution, so the equipment would be moved to each of those venues, and include a bit more detail as to how that would work in practice and estimated costs in the report. So going back to the recommendations, asking Council that to approve that the contents of the report are noted. That, as outlined in paragraph 413, noted the Standard Procedures Advisory Forum supported the current approach to councillor participation at meeting, with it being for business managers to take up within their own groups in terms of encouraging in-person attendance, and that area committees are held within the localities on a hybrid basis set out in the report, with authority being delegated to the Executive Director of Finance and Corporate Resources to implement that in consultation with the relevant area committee chairs where appropriate. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments, colleagues? Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Provost. I would like to formally welcome this report and just express my support for the Council's decision to align its working practices with those of the majority of other local authorities and our partners in the business sector. On reviewing the associated documents, I took the opportunity just to examine historical travel expense patterns for elected members. And prior to COVID-19, the annual travel expenses averaged approximately about 38,500. During lockdown, when all the meetings were conducted online, this figure significantly decreased to around 3,500. Since the adoption of our current hybrid model, the expenses have understandably risen, but remain at roughly half the pre-pandemic levels, to about 20,000. So I think in light of the ongoing financial pressures faced by all local services, every pound must be spent with care, and I therefore believe that maintaining the hybrid model represents a prudent and responsible approach to resource management. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you very much, Provost. I support the report as well. I think it's overdue in some regards. I'd like to ask about area committees, though, in particular. The proposals there, I think, are welcome. I think it's always been a bit ludicrous that area committees should meet in Hamilton. Everybody goes into Hamilton or does it online. Can I ask when this will come into effect? I mean, can we assume this will be available for the next relevant meetings of the area committees, for example?
Ian.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. No, I mean, I think from our perspective, probably a working assumption would be following the summer recess, but sooner if we can. But that was what was in our mind, subject to Council's decision today.
Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. As it stands, I can't support the report. I welcome the return to long-awaited return of the area committees to local localities. It should never have been taken away from there in the first place. But it's good to see them back and bringing some council meeting activity back into local areas. Today we've seen an example, albeit resolved quickly, of the technology failing again and not being able to get the meeting off at a timely-ish start, but albeit we got it going, but that's not always been the case since we've adopted hybrid meeting. We need to remember this is a job, this is our place of work, with recently increased remuneration for councillors, and we should be treating it a bit more seriously. In my opinion, the default position should be attendance at meetings, and that doesn't come through in this report, although there's some woolly words about business managers. Remote attendance can be accommodated and can be agreed by the chair and the business managers to accommodate people. And allowances should be made for inclusion regarding personal or protective characteristics that could make a physical challenge and to get to meetings, etc. And this would comply with the Equalities Act. That there are facilities that we could to facilitate MD that it's feeling that they can't get inclusion. Council meetings are decision-making forums, and to allow for the fullest inclusive debate, in my opinion, it's best served by members being present at committee and getting the dynamics of that committee, notwithstanding remotely people having to deal with continual technical issues. I mean, Councillor Miller mentioned the business sector. A lot of the business sector are encouraging and wanting their staff back at work. They're moving away from remote working. And a lot of them are major companies. And talking about travelling expenses, good governance shouldn't be just about pounds and a few pounds on travelling expenses. It should be about participation in full and frank debate. So, as it stands, I can't accept clause 2, and I would be moving against clause 2 and asking the council to accept that some sort of hybrid meeting is acceptable, but not as a default position, and there's allowances should be made and agreement can be got by the chairs and the business managers. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. As previous speakers have said, I welcome as well the holding of area committees and the moving of area committees into the localities. I suppose for me the conclusions of this report aren't particularly surprising, and in the modern hybrid workplace, obviously that promotes diversity in our workforce and also in our elected representatives, and also inclusivity. But I suppose what I would say is that as councillors, we really should mirror our expectations of the staff in South Lanarkshire Council in terms of hybrid working, which hybrid working means hybrid working in terms of being an expectation of working remotely at times, but also being present in our workplace. As Councillor Watson said, this is our workplace, as is our communities. And I think it is important that our electorate actually see us as visible participants in council business. Thank you.
Councillor Corbett. You're muted, Councillor Corbett.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to remind Councillor Watson of his comment there about this shouldn't just be about trying to save pennies, and maybe somebody should remind Councillor Watson that the everyday Joe Bloggs going to work doesn't get paid travel expenses for travelling from home to the place of employment. So perhaps if he wants to bring that back into force, we should abolish travel expenses when travelling from your home to your place of work, and we'll see how many councillors are in favour of his suggestion then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Can I ask Councillor Watson, do you wish to raise a motion? Are you wishing to raise a motion?
Yeah, I would move sorry, probably. I would remove clause 2 and replace it with remote working. Hybrid working would be acceptable on the basis that it's not the default position, and that any agreement for hybrid working should be based on discussion with the chair and the business managers, and that also allowance be taken for protected characteristics to work from home. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, can I ask if you've got a seconder for that? Councillor Fagan, your light's on.
No, I was requesting to speak. I'm not going to second that amendment.
No seconder, Councillor Watson, so... Oh.
Thanks, Provost. Accept that. Can you record my dissent when the decision's taken? Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that. Councillor Fagan.
So I was simply going to move the recommendations in the paper, that's all, if it came to a vote. But you've resolved it. Councillor Watson doesn't have a seconder. I was going to move the recommendations if it came to a vote.
Okay. So are we agreed, Council? Agreed, thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to item 7 on the agenda. It's the urgent business. And I'm going to invite Councillor Keat to speak. Can I just check, please, Councillor Keat, who your seconder is?
Councillor Dewar, Provost.
Sorry?
Councillor Dewar.
Councillor Dewar. Councillor Dewar, are you present in the meeting? Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Keat,
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, last week the board of Hamilton Academical Football Club released a public statement announcing that after 24 years, Hamilton Accies FC will relocate from their home at New Douglas Park in Hamilton to Broadwood Stadium in Cumbernauld. Colleagues, this is utterly devastating for our town, for the local economy, for the community links that have been established and maintained, for the loyal fans, for community cohesion and youth engagement, and arguably for the longevity of the club itself. I have spoken with and met many constituents over the last couple of days, and they have understandably expressed their sadness and dismay. I was contacted by my young constituent Callum to make me aware of the impact that this decision will have on him. Callum said, "I was introduced to the club by my father, who I lost in 2021, and I have been forever indebted to him for making me an Accies man. He gave me a platform to develop relationships with others, take part in live sport, and to help me understand the true meaning of joy when those victories occurred or when the goals hit the back of the net. I believe the club has a massively positive impact on my mental health, of many people, men and women, every week. Win, lose or draw, the club gives people a place they can go get away from the stresses of unemployment, addiction, financial stress, grief and general loneliness. The truth is, Gavin, I worry about people if this is to happen." Colleagues, Callum rightly highlights the gravity of the situation for our town, for the fan base and the club. A club with a 150-year history and the only club in the world to be born of a school football team. Whilst this motion rightly asks the Council to work proactively with Hamilton Academical Football Club as they explore long-term options, I am also acutely aware that there is already an existing purpose-built stadium in Hamilton in the form of New Douglas Park, with the infrastructure and transport links, with the community connections and with fans' names, past and present, engraved on the bricks. In that regard, I would encourage all those involved in the club to exhaust every possible avenue and have every possible conversation to ensure that Hamilton Accies FC remains in its rightful home of Hamilton. Provost, can I end with a thanks to yourself for accepting the urgent item of business, to council officers for their guidance, to colleagues across the chamber for their support and contributions, and to Councillor Dewar for supporting the urgent item of business today. Thank you.
Does anyone have any comments? Councillor Dewar.
Thank you, Provost. I thank Councillor Keith for bringing this motion forward and for asking me to second it. When I brought forward and spoke to my motion at full council back in November congratulating Hamilton Academical Football Club on its 150th anniversary, I didn't anticipate an end to the season like this. Confirmation of relegation to League One after an unsuccessful appeal against the points deduction, and the announcement from the Football Club's board of the intention to relocate the club to Broadwood Stadium in Cumbernauld from next season are a double hammer blow to the dedicated fan base, as well as damaging to the local economy and community links across Hamilton and South Lanarkshire built up since the club returned to town in 2001. Like Councillor Keith, I have spoken to fans and constituents over the past few days, and one thing I will say, it takes a lot to unite the Accies fan base, but the proposal to move to Cumbernauld seems to have managed it with an overwhelming opinion against this move. As Councillor Keith referred to, Hamilton is the club's home. New Douglas Park is where generations of Accies fans have watched the club over many decades, and the current stadium is for many the only home they've ever known. Indeed, had the club not moved back to the town, it's unlikely I would now be a fan and a season ticket holder for over 20 years. A move out of the town risks losing another generation of fans. Speaking now as a fan, not a councillor, I would urge the Football Club Board to engage with the 4 fans nominated to represent the fan base on behalf of Hamilton Accies Football Supporters Welfare Organisation, and failing that, for an open public fans forum to be arranged for issues to be discussed is the least the fans of the club deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Lambie.
Thanks, Provost. 151 years of proud footballing history in Hamilton seems to be in jeopardy once again for Hamilton Accies, which is resulting in lots of fans contacting councillors, many in the room here today, with concerns. And they've asked me to really just ask a few questions just to clarify what involvement or otherwise the council may have or influence. So a few brief questions. So the first one's a bit obvious. Can councillors confirm that South Lanarkshire Council, as the town planning authority, back when the stadium was conceived and built in the early 2000s, 2000 and 2001, I guess the council had an integral role, being the town planning authority, and we sort of zoned that area as the best place for a football stadium and for a sporting facility. The second one is, back then, it's before my time, unfortunately, what financial or development stakeholder role did the council have in that original development of New Douglas Park? Does the council have any remaining financial or contractual interests in the grounds or the stadiums? Because I know that quite often we have legacy clauses in the ownership patterns. And then the last one, just looking forward to the future and the safeguarding of New Douglas Park here in Hamilton. Is there a commitment from officers that master planning for a top-class sporting facility in that location of Hamilton, that still stands? There's no other plans to use that area of Hamilton for anything else? Thanks.
Thank you. Have any officers any comments to make? Paul.
Thanks, Provost. And just to pick up on Councillor Lambie's questions. So these, around the first two questions that Councillor Lambie's asking, these relate to things that happened a considerable period of time ago. Right now, in all honesty, I was probably the only person who was here at that time, right, but not trusted with anything sufficiently senior to become involved in this at that point. So I would need to go back and look in terms of those first two questions about zoning when the stadium was built and the financial stakeholder role that was assumed. I would need to go back and look at that and come back to you with a response, Councillor Lambie. In terms of remaining contractual obligations in relation to that stadium, I am not aware of any, but I'll clarify that as part of the response. And in terms of future commitment, I'd probably defer to the motion that's been brought today in terms of the council's ongoing engagement with regard to the matter. So if you can trust me to come back with those responses, Councillor Lambie, thank you.
Colleagues, I know how much we'll trust our Chief Executive to come back with a response to those comments. He always does the best he can possibly do, so I'm sure he'll be back with a response required. Any other questions or comments?
Provost.
Councillor Watson. Sorry, I'm maybe not getting this in the order, but because it's a hands-up job, it's difficult to, and trying to see over the top of the screen is always a challenge for me. Nobody in the front row here that I'm missing? No. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks to the two members for bringing this motion before us. I'm a wee bit behind in some of my knowledge in this, having just returned from holiday at the start of this week, but catching up on some of it on social media. And as a football fan, I always find it sad that we now have nomadic clubs in Scotland losing identity with their communities. And I think it's really important that we try and maintain Hamilton Football Club in Hamilton with that link to the local community. And I'm aware of a lot of the good community work that's carried out by the football club. I think I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's a motion, but it's really incumbent on officers. And what discussion that we're having as an authority with the club and the football club and the owners of the stadium. And is there an opportunity for us to act as arbitrators to try and bring the two parties together and ensure that we've got a stadium that can be filled with the local football team and not just another nomadic club in Scotland who's likely to move to another area in the future where their historic ties lie. So that's really my point, is have we got an opportunity to arbitrate between the bodies? And I think I'm right in saying that Hamilton have already registered with the SFA or the SPFL for the use of Broadwood, and that might preclude this happening going into next season, but hopefully some common sense could prevail if the two bodies could be brought together. And just in conclusion, Councillor Lambie made some valid points as well, and I would ask Paul if that response could maybe be circulated to all councillors. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor, I'm demoting him. Chief Executive.
Right. Listen, thanks, Provost. Right, and obviously answers to be provided to Councillor Lambie would be circulated around everybody. So if you, again, as Provost said, if you can trust me to come back with that. In terms of the question that Councillor Watson's asking about the dialogue with Hamilton Academical to date, can I bring in David Booth, whose department's been responsible in terms of that dialogue up to this point, and David can bring you up to date as best he can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. Hamilton Academicals and the club have come to the council in confidence, acknowledging that they have put a press release out mentioning their dialogue with the council. To date, there has been an exploratory meeting with them and a follow-up request to the council for information, which has been responded to. The contacts with ourselves have included speculative inquiries relating to the general availability of sites. We have said that we're prepared to have ongoing discussions with them in relation to that. There's been no contact with us from the owners of the club itself. It's been just the football club, no owners of the site. In terms of mediation and arbitration, we've not been approached by either party to carry out that function, but we would encourage them to continue dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Watts.
Can I maybe, sorry, just come back on? I think it'd be important that maybe we make that offer to both parties. Is there anything we can do to try and bring them together rather than waiting them, one party coming to us? I think there may be an opportunity there that maybe it's too late, I don't know, but I think don't leave any stone unturned in trying to get these two groups together. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks very much. As a local member, I feel as if I would like to say something. I've just got a short statement here, but there's something else I'd like to add following on from what David Watson says. Hamilton Academicals remain the only professional football club in the whole of Britain to be formed from a school, namely Hamilton Academy, now known as Hamilton Grammar. This is genuinely a local club and had enjoyed the support of people who travel many miles to follow other Glasgow-based teams and beyond. I doubt we'd be sitting here today discussing the potential demise of the club. This is a quote from last night. It's a bad enough story, but a quote last night from the Hamilton Advertiser. The club will now need to find an alternative venue for pre-season training from next month and potentially for group stage fixtures for the League Cup due to the Broadwood pitch being ripped up. And that was in the Hamilton Advertiser social media last night. So it's just another blow to the faithful. I genuinely feel it for a loyal group of season ticket holders who attend locally and travel to away games. This is a great tragedy in my view. I know many people who will be devastated if we lose this historic club. Good friends like David Wallace, John Patterson and a few councillors sitting behind me and across the chamber, to name but a few. I really do urge people in positions of authority at the club and in the stadium together to work out their differences. And that leads me on nicely to some of the comments that Councillor Watson was making. We are a local authority. This is a commercial and professional football club. With people in positions at the club and at the stadium. And I'm just worried that some sort of idea might be in the offing that this council could potentially do something to save the club. It's a very large commercial operation and the council resources aren't what they used to be. And in the past, there's been, Councillor Lambie asked the question, and I'm surprised he doesn't know this, but yes, when the stadium was first built, you can confirm this if you like, Paul, that South Lanarkshire Council, in the guise of the Leisure Trust and the Joint Valuation Board, did have a rental within the stadium, and that helped to build the club. That's over 20 years ago. The club has been into the Premier League since then, and you would like to think that the professionalism of the club would be able to sustain that rather than these fallouts and potentially coming back to the council for a bailout. I really just don't think that that's something that we can do. Thank you very much, Provost.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Razak.
Thank you, Chair.
I think a lot of the comments have been made that I would have made, but the thing I would also add is that there's also a cost to this as well as a youth setup. We have a youth setup that's been highly regarded in Scottish football, and that's the Hamilton Academicals youth teams. The problem now is that concerns are with the families, is what's going to be happening with them as well if this club's moving to Cumbernauld. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to draw a halt to it there. It's quite clear that it's a point that's close to the hearts of many in here, a strong fan base within the council chamber and a strong feeling, in my view, for support to try to maintain the club at its local venue. And I hope that the points that have been made this morning will be taken on board. Paul's going to come back to us with further information. And I know that David Booth's standing on the sidelines actively ready and waiting to become involved if required. So there's whatever way we can support the ongoing position of Hamilton Academicals in Hamilton, then I'm sure that I'm hoping that across the chamber we can agree that that's where we would want our club to be. So are we agreed? Right, thank you. Okay, I don't think there's anything else. Well, we've come to an early ending this morning. We didn't even need to have a BSL break. I just said it's the first time I've come in on a wheelchair, and I was wondering who was going to go out in a wheelchair. But this morning there's been no requirement for anybody to go out in a wheelchair. Personally, I want to thank all my colleagues for the support you've given me. Most of you know